Welcome from Washington, D.C. My name is Brad Pomerance, and we are joined by Lois Capps. She is a member of the United States Congress representing the beautiful Central Coast of California. It's so good to see you again, of course.
My pleasure, Brad. Thank you for bringing Charter to Washington, D.C.
It's our pleasure. I want to speak with you about water and the drought. And in so many ways, the Central Coast is a microcosm of California. The city of San Luis Obispo, plenty of water, no problem. Paso Robles, in real trouble.
Yes.
Talk to us on the ground.
We are definitely in a drought.
Right.
And there's not a lot we can do to decide whether it's going to rain or not. But what we can do is make available resources for businesses and farmers, folks who are affected by the drought. And I want to make sure that I'm glad you're scrolling our
Yes.
information about how to contact our offices on the screen, so that if you have a business that has been unduly affected by the drought, give our office a call and we can put you in touch with the Small Business Administration and or the U.S. Department of Agriculture, both of which have some low interest loans available. Now, they're, you have to apply for them and so forth, but we're happy to work with some of our folks to make sure that whatever assistance is there, we can bring to our constituents in this tough time.
And I think about your constituents. I think about the wineries in Paso. I think about the strawberry farms in Santa Barbara County. I mean, so important, not only for California, but for the nation.
Absolutely.
Talk to us about your constituents. How are they doing? Are they surviving? What's happening?
Well, agriculture is the core of our economy on the Central Coast. You mentioned some of our crops, but we still have cattle, we have a fishing industry. Of course, they don't depend upon the rain, but we are labor intensive in terms of some of the salad bowl, if you will,
literally,
that grows in the Santa Maria Valley up in throughout the whole Central Coast. And these folks depend upon water, and we want to make sure that whatever resources we can bring during this tough time, that we do that, and that we give full advantage to some of our local folks.
So there's a lot of question about how to rectify this drought, what we can do today, what we can do in the future. What can we do today? We'll talk about storage soon, but what can we do today?
Well, what we can do today is make sure that whatever resources the federal government, in addition to those that the state and local governments can provide, and the public in general, can receive the benefits that are available.
Right.
That's what we can do today.
But what about the steps that you and I can take, the consumer or the farmer, whomever it may be?
We certainly do want to be mindful of conservation, and that goes without saying, making sure that we use water carefully now during these times, that we don't waste it, that there are systems in place in many of our local communities to capture runoff, to reuse water, gray water, so to speak, for some of the purposes. And those are decided by our individual communities.
And that's the question. I mean, should we be taking mandatory steps? Governor Brown has said not yet, but some are.
Some are, and it's up to the local communities to decide whether they should or should not. But we all are mindful that whatever we can do to turn off the tap when we're brushing our teeth, I mean, those simple little things multiplied really make a difference.
Shower length, thinking about your usage when you go to the bathroom,
yes,
whether one should flush the toilet or not. Forgive me for saying that, but those are things to consider.
And we've been through drought before. There are localities that have gone into the business of desalination, and those are local decisions as well.
And I'd love to talk to you about that when we come back. For our viewers on HLN, we thank you so much for joining us. For our other viewers, we'll be right back with Congresswoman Lois Capps. So, Congresswoman, you mentioned desalination, and that is seen as a potential remedy for the drought. You may know there's some desal plants opening in Southern California, Carlsbad, for example. But what we do know about desal, it's expensive.
Yes, it is.
So is that an approach we should continue to pursue, hoping that economies of scale will bring it down, or are there other approaches?
Well, this again is for the local community to decide if they want to invest in the money. I live in Santa Barbara, so we made that decision to build a plant several years ago. Then it began to rain,
Right.
and the drought ended, and so it never was really implemented.
I
But
see.
I know there's an interest in redoing that.
Let's talk about storage.
Yes.
Because that is a question that is on the minds of both electeds in Sacramento as well as DC. In Sacramento, there's discussion of a water bond. I know you're not in Sacramento, but that's a big issue, as well as in DC. I know your friends on the Republican side passed some legislation that was looking towards changing some of the environmental regulations, focusing on storage. Where do we go on the question of storage as a future solution?
Ooh, I think what we need to do is look at every angle and examine the value. I don't believe we need to lower our environmental standards. I think we've established those, and I believe we can do this. We can meet this challenge using the environmental standards that are in place, and still look at avenues for storing water and for making sure that the next drought, there will be one, that we're better prepared for.
Do we need to look toward increasing storage capacity in your mind?
I think that certainly is on the table and needs to be studied.
I want to talk about a new caucus you started. It's
Yes.
very exciting. It's called the Cut Flower Caucus. Tell us about it.
Well, you know, cut flowers are a big business
Huge.
on the Central Coast, particular parts of my district. There are many cut flower gardeners, the growers, and it is a big part of our economy. So Duncan Hunter represents a district in the San Diego area.
Sure. A Republican member.
And he is a Republican member. This is definitely a bipartisan caucus. And come to find out, there are cut flowers grown in every state in the country.
All 50.
All 50. So we think this has an opportunity to become a big chunk of
Fantastic.
our interest in supporting this industry. You know, their biggest challenge, these growers, are the fact that we have environmental standards, we have labor standards, and some of the competing countries, mostly South America, are really eating into the business. And so we want to really support our domestic cut flower business. And I want to report that the last state dinner in the White House, they were featuring domestic flowers.
I love it.
We're making a big deal out of that.
You speak about our friends south of the border, and that begs the question about immigration reform. I recently had really the honor and privilege to interview some of your presumed constituents, Oaxacan agriculture workers, and they touched me in a lot of ways. Oaxaca's a region in Mexico.
Yes.
And they pick strawberries.
And they are constituents.
Right,
Many of
yes,
them are
yes,
on the Central Coast.
yeah.
They pick the strawberries, they
Right.
pick the citrus, and they pick the avocados.
Right. So where do we stand on immigration reform? It seemed as if there may have been some momentum in the House earlier this year, but maybe not now.
You know, I did a series of listening sessions among my constituents a few months ago with the agriculture community, high-tech community, faith community, universities where there are so many people that want to continue their education. It is really time to pass comprehensive immigration reform in the House. The Senate passed a bill, and it's not a perfect bill, but it makes sure that our borders stay secure. It makes sure that families are unified. It provides a pathway to citizenship for the hundreds of thousands of people living in the shadow.
So I know that your friends in the Republican caucus in California are likely to support what you've just said. But the challenge becomes your friends that are not from California in the Republican caucus. And
Well,
so
it's primarily, I didn't mean
Yeah,
to interrupt
no.
you, Brad. It's primarily the leadership. Frankly, if the bill that the Senate passed were brought to the floor of the House tomorrow, we would vote for it and it would get signed into law. And it's dragging our economy back not to pass comprehensive immigration reform. I've heard this time and time again from our high-tech industries, for example, in my district, who say they can't get the workforce that they need. These are highly skilled workers. They come from other countries, some of them, not all, but a fair number, and we don't want to block that avenue.
her name is Lois Capps. She is a member of the United States Congress representing the beautiful Central Coast of California. My name is Brad Pomerance. Thank you so much for joining us from Washington, D.C.
Thank you.